Good day, friends. President Trump's recent visit to China has shifted the US military pivot from Asia to Western Pacific, and with that, the combat role of Quad is no longer there, which for India in any case was symbolic. However, India, because of its presidency of BRICS this year, it has two good opportunities. One is that it can play a meaningful and a big role in the new world order where it should belong. And the second is through its BRICS presidency, it can improve its relations with Pakistan, which in turn will improve India China ties as well. I will explain all this step by step. Now, we know it was President Obama who started the military competition with China when in 2011 he ordered the pivot to Asia. The same year, the Pentagon raised the US Cyber Command to catch up with the grown cyber capabilities of the PLA. Then it was President Trump, in his first term in office in 2018, he renamed the US Pacific Command to US Indo Pacific Command. This gave centrality to India in the American defense strategy, but of course, this was hugely symbolic for the simple reason that India is not a military ally of America. India is a strategic partner despite the fact that it has signed all the four military foundation agreements of America. Then in next year, in 2019, Trump raised a new service called the US Space Force once again to meet up the humongous challenge, the space challenge of the PLA, the Chinese. And with the raising of this new service, now the US military has 5 services: Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force. But it was President Biden who, in his presidency, he never went to China, but he accelerated the military competition with China. He took a series of steps, big steps. For example, he raised the level of Quad to summit level. And in his first year in office, 2 summit meetings of Quad were held. The first one was held in March 2021, which was a virtual meeting because of COVID. And the second was in September 2021, a physical meeting of the Quad Summit in the White House. And his Defense Secretary General Lloyd Austin, he took 2 steps. One, he enunciated a new strategy for the accelerated military competition with China, which he called integrated deterrence. What this meant was that the heavy lifting in this would be done by the US Indo-Pacific Command. However, the allies of America would be part of the joint force. India, of course, could not be part of the joint force, once again for the reason that it is not an ally, it's a strategic partner of America. And the other step that Lloyd took was that this Quad, which was now raised to the summit meeting, he made Quad the central pillar of his integrated deterrence by raising the level of the Malabar naval exercises. Now, these Malabar naval exercises, we know that they started in 1992 between the Indian Navy and the US Navy, and they started as at a very small level like passage exercises. Then in 2020, all the Quad navies were brought in for the first time of the Quad nation. But it was under Lloyd Austin that now they got the role of interoperability, that they had to do the exercises for interoperability, which basically meant to be able to do combat together. And what they started practicing was anti-submarine warfare, maritime domain awareness, cross-tech flying, all this was being done. Once again, India being a strategic partner, its role was very much there, but once again symbolic. But what India got out of all this was something big. Instead of a combat role, which was symbolic, India got a huge combat support role. And in this, the Indian Navy, it built a fusion center. And in this fusion center, all the maritime domain awareness, the intelligence that was collected from the entire area of responsibility of the Indo-US Pacific Command, it was fused here under the Indian Navy. This was a big role. And because of this role, India also decided to reshape its foreign policy. So SARC was left by India in 2016, and Act East policy of the Modi government was aligned with the American Indo-Pacific thinking or Indo-Pacific strategy. And what was put in this was strategic reach. It was explained to the people of India that because of this policy alignment with the Americans, now the strategic reach of India, it was to the east up till Japan, and it was in the south till the Oceania countries, Australia being a prominent Oceania nation. There are 14 Oceania nations. So strategic reach basically was meant to portray to the people of India that India was now in a regional competition with China. As far as China was concerned, the military element, the Malabar exercises of the Quad, it that the Chinese saw as the Asian NATO. They started calling it the Asian NATO, but again, they were not perturbed by that. But as far as America was concerned, which was leading all this Quad, for them it was a psychological deterrence against China. So the point to make is that was under Biden that the military competition was intense. But after the visit of Trump, everything now has taken a complete somersault. It has taken a U-turn. Because the key takeaway of the meeting of President Xi is constructive strategic stability. This is the phrase. That means there will be cooperation if there is strategic stability. And strategic stability has two elements. One element was explained by Xi Jinping himself to President Trump, and that is Taiwan. Taiwan is a red line of China, and any change of status quo of Taiwan is unacceptable to China. And the second is what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, he had already given out, which is called that the US military now needs to deter China not through military competition but through strength, by building strength, not confrontation or competition. In fact, there is a very interesting statement. It's a longest statement that was given by Pete Hegseth on 29th of April this year to the Committee on Armed Services, which is asking for the Pentagon budget for 2027, which is worth a read. And here the two top priorities of the Pentagon, as I said, the top priority is that the pivot has shifted from Asia to the Western Pacific. And there is a strategy also for the Western Pacific where the pivot has shifted, and Pete Hegseth now calls it re-deterrence, re-establishing deterrence. So it is about re-establishing the deterrence, which is for the Western Pacific. And this is very logical because if MAGA is to happen, that means make America great again. Then, as far as the Americans are concerned, which believe in spheres of influence, it is important that first they re-establish their deterrence in their home base, which is Western Hemisphere. And when you look at the budget that he has asked for doing this, it is $1.5 trillion for fiscal year 2027, which is 600 billion more than the fiscal year of 2026. And the three key areas when you read in the statement are, of course, Golden Dome is top. And I have spoken about Golden Dome in my earlier videos also. This is primarily about the capabilities the Russians and the Chinese have in the near space, which is their hypersonic cruise missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, and specifically of the Chinese, the fractional orbital bombardment system, which they demonstrated in August 2021. Then the second priority as part of the re-establishing deterrence is to invigorate the defense industrial base, make it vibrant. And the third one is very interesting. Let me talk about this a bit, which is to elevate the cyber command which I said was created in 2011 by the Obama administration, to US Cyber Command 2. Now, what this means is that in the present Cyber Command of the Americans, they have the personnel which come from all the other services from Army, Air Force, Navy. So basically, the Cyber Command relies completely on the other services to provide them manpower, to provide them training, to provide them equipment. So these are those people which had been doing some other job now have been brought in here. So what this Cyber Command 2 says is that look, now we want to raise the level of the Cyber Command to a unified combatant command, which is at par with the geographical command of America, which is like US Indo-Pacific Command, or the functional command like the strategic command. And for that, what is required is domain expertise, domain mastery is required. In other words, nobody will come from the other services. Only direct recruitments will be done in the cyber command, and so that these people who come in, they have deep cyber technology knowledge. That is one. Second, there will be a separate allocation of defense budget. And once this happens, then obviously the next step will be that this Cyber Command 2 is likely to be made into a service itself, like the Space Force that came from the US Air Force. Now, why I'm saying all this is because all this is being done, the Cyber Command 2, to meet the challenge of the PLA. And the PLA challenge we know is that in 2024, they did a reorganization, and as part of the reorganization, they established a cyberspace force and a aerospace force, both arms directly reporting to the Central Military Commission. And as the Chinese have repeatedly been saying that we support Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity, much of the gains that they have made, they are happy to share with the Pakistan military. And I have explained this in my earlier videos, but perhaps one line or saying this again is meaningful, which is that the PLA helped the Pakistan Air Force set up the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Computing, where two key projects are AI in electronic warfare, called cognitive electronic warfare, and AI in cyber. So this is about re-establishing deterrence in the Western Hemisphere. As far as the Indo-Pacific region is concerned, here Pete Hegseth has said that we want to deter China through strength. And what that means is that first and foremost, to have a balanced relation with the PLA, that means there will be a lot of military to military communications between the two militaries. In any case, we know that the two head of the governments, Trump and Xi, are perhaps likely to meet at least, if not two times, once this year more. In September, Trump has invited Xi to America, and he may also invite Xi to come for the G20 in December in America. But as far as the competition is concerned, competition is over, and now what they are talking about is collective defense in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, collective defense is the complete opposite of integrated deterrence, which was started by Lloyd Austin. Please remember what I said a little while back, that in integrated deterrence, the heavy lifting was to be done by the Americans. Here, the heavy lifting is to be done by the allies. Allies like Japan, Australia, Philippines, South Korea, and they are the ones who will do the heavy lifting. It is called collective defense, and everybody will be part of the joint force. Now, India once again will not be part of it because it is a strategic partner of America. So, in other words, what we are looking at as far as Quad is concerned, Quad will not have the Malabar exercises will be downgraded, which means that what the Chinese used to say Asian NATO, that will cease to exist, and it is almost certain, like last year in 2025, there was no summit meeting of Quad. And this year, forget this year, the entire tenure of President Trump, this is unlikely to happen. The summit meeting of Quad. This will not happen because there is no way that Trump would want to unnecessarily annoy the Chinese. Now, we know that Secretary of State Rubio is coming this week, end of the week, to Delhi, and a ministerial meeting of the Quad is to be held next week. So it will have everything except what it should have, which I have already explained. And the added thing is what Rubio has publicly stated, that as far as BRICS is concerned, he said India is on our side on various issues within BRICS. Now, this is not a good thing for a country like India, which has the BRICS presidency this year. So, what I wish to put across is that India needs to strengthen BRICS and India needs to have a successful BRICS presidency. What we saw in the foreign ministers' meet recently was a total disaster. Surely the Indian diplomats who gave a performance in 2023 in the G20 can do a much better job when the summit will be held of BRICS. And I'm sure that they will be able to get these two sides, warring sides, Iran and the Emiratis, UAE, to some sort of an understanding so that a joint statement can come out from BRICS Summit of India. Equally important for India's BRICS Summit success will be that the two great powers that support BRICS, which is China and Russia, both their leaders should be there. This is important because please remember that BRICS is the central key institution of the new world order. And not having President Putin and President Xi Jinping in Delhi will not make the BRICS summit a success for India. And therefore, it is important for India that India favorably consider the application which has already been moved by Pakistan for membership of the BRICS as well as the BRICS Bank, which is the new development bank. Because if India is favorable towards that, it is almost certain, or it is certain, that President Xi Jinping would participate in the BRICS summit. And when you take a look beyond summit, plenty more will be accomplished. For all the rhetoric that goes on in India, the reality is that today the defense of India is sufficiently weakened. I won't go in the details explaining that. And India also needs a reworking on its foreign policy as well as its strategic reach. And for all this, what India needs is the concept of collective security, the concept which has already been shared by Xi Jinping to Prime Minister Modi when President Xi Jinping came to India for the second informal summit that was held in October 2019 in Mahabalipuram, Chennai, where he spoke about the triangular peace between India, Pakistan, peace between India and China. And of course, as far as China and Pakistan are concerned, they are all weather friends. So the point is, what he was saying was the concept of collective security, and that is central to the vision of the new world order. Collective security, or what is called indivisible security, that is the only way to get development through peace. I have said this many times, but more as to how this can be developed further, I will explain that in a separate video. Thank you for now.